The feeling of being one step ahead of your enemy or competitor in business is priceless. But I never thought that I would be one step ahead of my cheating wife. My wife took a lover with whom she wanted to escape from me after taking all my money, but something went wrong with her. It was Friday afternoon, 2 hours since they had left New York. They still had another hour of driving before reaching home. They had just dropped off their only child, Lisa, at her college campus as she was starting her freshman year. Nancy glanced at her husband, Bill, who was driving their Ford Transit. They couldn't take her BMW 230i convertible, since they had all of Lisa's belongings to transport. Time flies, she thought. It was on her own high school graduation day that she found out she was pregnant. Bill was still in university, studying to become an engineer. Their parents were supportive, knowing their children were in love. She stayed with her parents after the baby was born, and they got married once Bill graduated. Nancy has been a stay-at-home mom, watching her husband progress from a junior engineer at a local company to owning his own HVAC business. The business has thrived, with Bill securing contracts with major construction companies. He has always been a hard-working man, dedicated to his work and family. "The house will feel so empty without her," Bill said sadly. "She was closer to you than to me. She was always Daddy's little girl." "She's our princess and deserves to be treated like one," Bill added. "But have you noticed her behavior these past few months? She treated me terribly. Whenever you were home, she was always by your side. Sometimes she would mock me. When you weren't there, she would shut herself in her room, avoiding me. Come on, Nancy. She's still a child. She was under a lot of pressure during her senior year of high school. She wanted to achieve the highest marks to fulfill her dream of going to Columbia University. Try to understand." "I know, Bill, but have you seen how she reacts whenever we're in the same room? Do you remember 2 months ago when I was sitting on the couch and she came up behind me with a knife? I thought she was going to hurt me that day. I saw hatred in her eyes." "You're imagining things, Nancy," Bill said, irritated. Nancy remained silent, not wanting to continue the conversation. She didn't want Bill to get angry, at least not yet. She took out her cell phone and sent a text message saying, "We'll be there in 30 minutes. A minute later, her phone beeped. "Is it from Lisa?" Bill asked. "No, it's Betty." "And how is she getting along with Paul? Last time at our barbecue, she was complaining about him working late, putting in too many hours, and caring more about others than her. She should understand that being a sheriff isn't easy. She should have thought carefully before marrying him." Once again, Nancy remained silent. She wanted Bill to stay calm until they got home. She leaned against the window and wished they were already there. As Bill turned into his driveway, he saw a sheriff's car in front of his garage. Bill parked his van behind it. Paul and his assistant got out and greeted Bill. "What's happening?" Bill asked Paul, clearly confused. Meanwhile, Nancy quickly moved to stand behind the assistant. Bill frowned. "This is the part of my job I despise the most," the sheriff said as he took out a manila envelope and handed it to Bill. "William Thompson, you've been served." "Paul, is this some kind of joke?" Bill's hand trembled as he took the envelope. He turned to Nancy, who looked down, unable to meet his gaze. "Why, Nancy? What did I do?" "Bill, it's best if you leave. Consult a lawyer and start the divorce process. There's also a restraining order. You're not allowed within 500 feet of Nancy," Paul explained. "Paul, last Sunday you and Betty were here for Lisa's farewell barbecue. You both knew this was coming. You ate my food, drank my drinks, wished Lisa well, and left with smiles. This is what I call hypocrisy." "Bill, please try to understand." "Understand what, Paul? That you're a jerk?" Bill shouted. "And you," he said to Nancy with fury in his eyes. "You betrayed me. If you didn't love me anymore, you could have just told me. I would have divorced you amicably." "Bill, the restraining order is already in effect. I advise you to leave now," Paul said, trying to stay calm. Bill walked to his van and tossed the envelope onto the passenger seat. He then slammed the door shut and approached Paul. "I need my personal things. I hope you're not such a jerk that you won't let me enter my house and retrieve my belongings." He took out his house key and headed to the front door. "Your key won't work," Paul said, pulling out a set of keys from his pocket and handing them to his assistant. "I see you've taken care of everything, or was it Betty? She must have been here with a locksmith while we were out, right?" Paul didn't respond. He just nodded at his assistant, who then escorted Bill inside and stayed with him while he packed 2 suitcases. "Don't worry," Paul reassured Nancy. "I'll have my guys do regular patrols here. I wouldn't leave the house alone for a few days if I were you. He's extremely angry and might do something rash." "I'll stay home. I'll call a friend to come and stay with me for the weekend," Nancy replied. "Yes, a friend," Paul muttered under his breath. Bill came out with the suitcases and placed them in the back of the van. The assistant handed Nancy the set of keys. Bill took out the envelope, removed the divorce papers, and started reading them. "Bill, you've got your stuff. It's time to leave," Paul ordered. "Wait, this is asking for 50% of my business, 50% of all our savings. She wants the house and her car, plus monthly alimony. She's cleaning me out. Bill, if you don't leave, I'll have to arrest you," Paul said, reaching for a pair of handcuffs on his belt. "No need, Paul. I'll sign the papers right now and disappear." Bill took a pen and signed wherever indicated by small arrow stickers. "Can you please witness the document and give me my copy?" Nancy, Paul, and his assistant stood there in shock. They never believed Bill would accept the terms. Nancy smiled, feeling fortunate. She had gotten everything she wanted and was now free from both her husband and daughter. Paul signed the papers as a witness and handed Bill his copy. Bill climbed into his van. "Who is he? How long have you been sleeping with him?" Bill snapped at Nancy. "Go inside and lock the door behind you," Paul told Nancy, walking toward Bill's van. The assistant accompanied Nancy inside. "Don't do anything stupid. Think about Lisa." "I already did something stupid when I married this witch," Bill shouted as he started the engine. "She preferred to divorce me because she knew I'd never accept an open marriage, unlike you." "What? Open marriage?" Paul asked, stunned. "Don't try to hide it, Paul. Everyone knows." "What are you talking about?" Paul almost screamed. "Look, Paul, we all know that when you're working nights, your brother Tom is warming your bed." "Are you trying to turn me against my brother, you bastard?" "Oh, great. She's cheating on you. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news. See, Paul, as a sheriff, you've been trained to detect when someone is lying. Go home and ask Betty. Then you'll know." Bill reversed and left the property as he was told. Left alone, Nancy poured herself a glass of wine and stopped in front of Pagnole's masterpiece railway station. The painting was worth at least $100,000. He shouldn't have left her here, she thought with a sly smile. She took out her phone and pressed the speed dial button. "Come on, Jason, pick up the phone," Nancy shouted into the phone before hanging up. "He should have come straight here after work," she muttered to herself. Sitting down, she took a sip of wine and reminisced about their first meeting. It was a year ago at the department store. They bumped into each other in the shoe department. He was in his early 20s, and he was beautifully built. She was immediately charmed. They exchanged phone numbers, and the next day she invited him to her house. He approached her during his lunch break and made love to her. After he left, she could barely walk. That night, she told Bill she wasn't feeling well and went to bed early. From that day on, she realized that Bill would never be able to match her young and energetic lover. Bill has always been absorbed in his business. In the evenings, he was exhausted, helping Lisa with her homework, and then worked late with his documents. As soon as he went to bed, he immediately fell asleep. Nancy finished her wine and poured herself another glass. She pressed the speed dial button again and received an automatic voice message. "The number you are calling is temporarily unavailable. Please try again later." Frustrated, she threw the phone on the couch, grabbed the remote control, and turned on the TV. She couldn't focus on the screen. Jason had made it clear to her that her body belonged to him and only to him. She had been in his apartment just the day before. She had a spare key and could visit her lover at any time. Sometimes when he was at work, she would come there and clean the whole apartment. She bought him clothes, shoes, perfumes, and even gave him an expensive watch for his birthday. Sometimes she even gave him some pocket money and let him drive his BMW. "Oh my God, I need him to be with me right now," Nancy told herself. She tried to remember the last time she had been intimate with Bill, but she couldn't. Has it been 3 months, 6 months, or even more? She didn't care. She had a young lover, a real man. Now they will be together without fear. She is free, and he will move in with her that evening. After taking a shower, she went to the living room, grabbed her cell phone, and cursed again. "Where are you, Jason? Why don't you pick up the bloody phone?" She then went to the kitchen and made herself a light dinner. Damn, I can't leave the house or I'd drive to his place. Suddenly, something on the TV caught her attention. She hurried back to the living room and turned up the volume. She watched in horror as Paul, handcuffed, was escorted to a police car. Sheriff Paul Anderson shot his wife in the head and then drove to his brother's workplace where he shot him 5 times. Both the wife and the brother are dead, the anchorman reported. Nancy turned off the TV and sat down, shocked. "Oh, Betty, I told you to be very careful," she cried. That night, she couldn't sleep at all. For the first time, she felt completely alone. She'd kicked out her husband, couldn't reach her lover, her best friend was killed, her daughter was avoiding her, and her parents had already passed away. The only one left was her sister, who lived with her husband Tom in another city 300 miles away. Saturday passed, and she still couldn't get in touch with Jason. She felt both anxious and irritated. He could at least leave a message and let me know what's going on, Nancy thought, repeatedly. On Sunday morning, she decided to drive to Jason's apartment. As soon as she walked inside, she sensed that something was wrong. The pictures on the walls and all the electronic items were missing. His walk-in closet was empty, and there were no signs of his personal items in the bathroom. She threw herself onto the bed. He left me without a word," Nancy cried. "How could he do this to me? It was his idea to divorce Bill, move in with me, and get married after the divorce was finalized." She left the apartment and drove to the department store, which was open on Sundays, hoping to find Jason at work. She met one of his colleagues, who told her that Jason, half an hour after arriving at work on Friday morning, had asked for permission to return home because he had forgotten his wallet. He never came back, and later that day he emailed a resignation letter to the boss. A devastated Nancy made her way to her car. "Why? Why did he do this to me?" she cried softly. On her drive home, she stopped at a gas station and was shocked to find that both her credit and debit cards were declined. She cursed under her breath as she paid with the last of the cash in her purse. Arriving home, she sought solace in alcohol. Monday morning, she visited the bank and met with the manager. She was stunned to learn that there was less than $5 left in her joint account. "Mrs. Thompson, last Friday your husband visited us and closed your joint credit card," the manager explained. "He also informed us that you are divorcing him and he will no longer be responsible for the mortgage on your house or car." "That's a mistake. My car was paid off and the house mortgage should have been settled," Nancy said incredulously. "The bank issued a car loan, and we have documentation showing your husband took out a second mortgage on the house for your daughter's university expenses." "But why is there no money in my account?" Nancy asked. "Last week funds were withdrawn to pay your monthly mortgage installment. There haven't been any deposits for the past 3 months, and the balance has been exhausted." "What about my husband's business?" "There should be monthly transfers from the company," Nancy insisted. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Thompson, but I cannot disclose information about Mr. Thompson's accounts or business dealings with you. However, if future mortgage payments aren't made, your house and car may be repossessed." "But I don't have a job." "I would recommend discussing these matters with your lawyer." Later, Nancy checked the safe deposit box she shared with her husband. Only her jewelry remained. She gathered them all and placed them in her handbag. After leaving the bank, Nancy immediately dialed Bill's cell phone but received an out-of-service message. Puzzled, she then tried his work number, but it just kept ringing. Frustrated, she dialed Lisa's number. "What do you want?" Lisa shouted angrily when she answered. "Is this how you speak to your mother, Lisa?" Nancy responded, taken aback. "How else should I talk to you after what you did?" Lisa retorted bitterly. "I won't help you find Dad. You left him heartbroken, Nancy. I don't want anything to do with you anymore." Nancy was shocked into silence as Lisa abruptly hung up. She sat in her car, gripping the steering wheel, trying to process everything. Her thoughts drifted to Jason and where she might have gone wrong. She decided to call her lawyer and managed to secure a same-day appointment for late afternoon. "Mrs. Thompson, following your call this morning," Nancy's lawyer informed her, "we conducted searches on your husband's company. Last Thursday, he filed for bankruptcy before you served him. It appears the company will likely be liquidated." "But last time you said I could recover millions," Nancy nearly shouted. "Please try to remain calm, Mrs. Thompson. Just 2 weeks ago, there were no signs of financial trouble. Everything seemed in your favor. Now the company's accounts are frozen. What about the car and the house mortgage? Last week he used your house as collateral for a loan before being served. As for the car, when you signed the ownership papers, you also unwittingly signed for a loan in your name." "This can't be happening," Nancy sobbed. "Mrs. Thompson, I have a personal question. Do you think your husband was aware he was going to be served?" "No," Nancy replied thoughtfully. "He never expected this." She took a deep breath. "So, if I understand correctly, I won't receive anything from the company. I have no money in the bank and my car and house will be taken away." "I'm afraid so. Is there any way he can be made to pay the mortgage at least?" "The company was his only income. Without it, he's insolvent. Once he finds new work, we can pursue alimony payments. We had a few investment certificates that I couldn't find in our safe deposit box. We'll investigate when he cashed these certificates and look into his company thoroughly. Also, we need to locate your husband. His legal advisor is handling his affairs. Please proceed. One more thing, Mrs. Thompson. These actions will incur additional costs. How will you settle the bill?" Nancy had never considered all the expenses, but then she smiled. "I have a painting that's worth some money." "Great. Get the money and write us a check so we can get started on the job." "No problem. I'll give you a call soon." "One last thing, Mrs. Thompson. In the worst-case scenario, you should be prepared to leave your house. I suggest you start looking for a place to stay." Back at home, she sat in front of Pagnol's masterpiece. "I really wanted to keep you, but because of that jerk of a husband, we have to part ways," she said to the painting. She then took out her phone and called her sister. "Hi, sis. I need to ask you a favor. You know I'd never say no to you, Nancy. Bill and I are getting divorced." "What? Is this some kind of joke?" "No, sis, it's complicated. Temporarily, I'll need a place to stay. I was wondering if you could let me stay in your guest room. I'll explain everything when we meet." "What about Lisa? How is she taking it? You know she's Daddy's girl. I'm the bad guy here. Can't you two find a way to work it out? Maybe see a counselor?" "I don't think so." "I'm really sorry to hear that. There's no problem on my end. I'm sure Tom won't mind, and our daughter will be thrilled to have you with us for a while." "Thank you, sis. I'll let you know when I'm coming." Nancy hung up. On Tuesday, Nancy visited a goldsmith to appraise her jewelry. To her surprise, she learned that all her pieces were merely gold-plated copper and of low value. She cursed Bill for giving her fake gifts and hurried to an art gallery to seek an appraisal for her Pagnol painting, The Train Station. "I'd like to know the value of my Pagnol's The Train Station," Nancy asked an appraiser she met there. The man carefully examined the painting, scrutinizing every detail. "The train station represents Pagnoli's finest work. He managed to encapsulate a myriad of emotions in this single piece: arrivals, departures, happiness, and sadness woven together. He placed the painting on an easel, illuminated it with a spotlight, and began inspecting it with a magnifying glass. After a few minutes, he burst into laughter. "What's wrong?" asked Nancy, puzzled. "Wait, let me show you something." The man fetched his laptop, placed it on a nearby table, and pulled up a website. With a few keystrokes, an image of the train station appeared on the screen. He zoomed in on the bottom left corner. "You see here, there's a man and a little girl on the platform watching a woman walking towards the train, her back turned to them. The man looks very sad, and the girl is crying." "I can see that, but what's your point?" Nancy was a bit puzzled. "Now, look at the same scene in your painting." The man handed Nancy the magnifying glass. Nancy glanced at the bottom left corner and was taken aback. "In yours, both the man and the little girl are laughing and pointing at the woman as if mocking her." It's a forgery," Nancy stuttered. "Yes, I apologize, but a convincing one." "Oh my God!" Nancy sank into a chair, feeling hopeless. "I can offer you $200. I just want to hang it for my friends and clients to have a good laugh." Nancy completed the deal and left, looking defeated. Her phone rang, and her sister's number appeared on the screen. "Hi," Nancy greeted, trying to hide her chagrin. "Don't say hello to me." His sister's furious voice rang out. "What? Why?" Nancy hesitated. "Tom received an email from some stranger sent to everyone we know. This is a link to the website. Videos of you with a guy. Dates covering the year and last week." "How could you do that, Nancy?" I stammered Nancy. "You did it in your bed, Nancy. And some of them are in a cheap apartment." The sister's voice sounded irritated. "I have to explain," Nancy pleaded. "No need. You're disgusting. Tom doesn't want anything to do with you. He said you would tarnish me and my daughter. Our door is closed to you. Go to your lover." The call ended abruptly. "Oh my God! They know! They've known all this time!" Nancy's face twisted in horror. "What should I do now? Everyone knows, the whole city knows. I have to leave, run away, far, far away." Her thoughts were racing in panic. 5 years later, Bill sat in the front row of the church, reflecting on the phone call he had received earlier that morning. He hadn't shared the news with anyone, especially not on such a momentous day. Just moments ago, he had proudly escorted Lisa down the aisle. As he watched the couple at the altar, he saw Lisa say, "I do," to her college sweetheart. His thoughts drifted back to the day Lisa had called him in tears. He remembered sitting in his office when his daughter's distressed voice came through the phone. Dad, please come home," Lisa sobbed. "What's wrong, sweetie? Why are you crying?" Bill asked, alarmed. "Please, Dad, just come home. I'm waiting outside our house," Lisa pleaded urgently. "Outside the house? What's happened? Should I call your mom?" "No. Please just come, Dad," Lisa insisted. "I'm coming right now, sweetheart." While driving to his destination, Bill felt a growing sense of unease. Various concerns flooded his mind. Why wasn't his daughter at school? Why was she outside the house instead of inside? Why did she insist he not inform Nancy? Was she hurt? Suddenly, he slammed on the brakes, tires screeching. He had almost run a red light. "Stay calm," he reminded himself. He recalled that Lisa had been working late on a project the previous day. He had even helped her, offering ideas, and they had compiled everything into a PowerPoint file, saved on a USB drive. Lisa was waiting a block away. Bill pulled over, and she quickly got into the car. "Please, Dad, don't go to the house." "Okay, Lisa, tell me what's going on." Bill turned off the engine. "I forgot my USB stick this morning when I was rushing to school. I got special permission to come home during lunch and pick her up. I found an old Honda in our driveway. I went into the house and heard strange noises coming from your room. I crept up the stairs and looked into your room. The door was loosely closed. Lisa began to cry. "Okay, honey, take a breath," Bill said in a soothing voice. He stroked her back. "Take your time. I saw a man's mother. She cheated on you. She cheated, Dad. She's cheating on you, on us," Lisa sobbed. Bill was sitting in shock. "Are you sure about what you saw?" He turned to face her. "I recorded it on my phone." She took out her cell phone and played the recording for her father. Bill's world suddenly froze when he saw Nancy. "Dad, get her out of the house. I don't want to see her anymore. She's not my mom. My mom would never do that." "I need to think about it." "What do you need to think about? Just kick her out." "It's not that easy, honey. There are legal procedures that need to be followed." "Tell me, Dad, do you still want to stay with her? Do you still want to be with her?" "I don't approve of cheating, but we need to know why she did it, if it was a one-time affair, or if she's been doing it for a long time, or if she's going to keep doing it. Here he is." Lisa pointed at the Honda pulling out of the driveway and turned away from them. "Let's follow this guy." Bill started the engine. They followed the Honda to the store where they spotted the young man putting on his uniform jacket in the parking lot before heading towards the employee's entrance. "He works here. He's young," Bill remarked. "Young or not, I don't care," Lisa replied, snapping photos of the guy and his car. "We know one thing already. Sweetie, I'll drop you at school, then drive home, grab your flash drive, and bring it to you. I'll inform Nancy." "She's not my mom," Lisa interrupted her father. "I'll tell Nancy that you called me and asked me to bring it. I don't want you to face her alone, not now or ever. Do you understand?" "I understand, but why?" "Because I don't want her to know that we're onto her. I don't want you to accidentally spill the beans in your anger." "What's your plan?" "I want to be kept informed about everything you do." "Promise?" "I'm going to wire our home. And yes, Princess, I promise to keep you in the loop." "I love you, Dad." Lisa hugged Bill. "Love you too. Now take me to school and hurry back with the USB. My class is starting soon." Bill arrived home, parked in the driveway, and entered the house. "Honey, I'm home," he called out. Nancy hurried out of the bedroom, a look of surprise on her face. "Oh, Bill, it's you. Who were you expecting?" He gazed directly into Nancy's eyes. "I wasn't expecting you at this time." Lisa called. She forgot her flash drive. "I need to take it to her." He walked up to Nancy and caught the scent of intimacy in the air. "Do we have time for a quickie?" "A quickie? I've been cleaning the house and I'm sweaty. You wouldn't enjoy it. Plus, you have to deliver Lisa's USB." "You're right." At work, Bill searched the internet for the best video and audio recording devices, as well as mobile phone surveillance software. After that, he went to an electronics store and bought everything he needed. One of the important decisions he made was never to physically touch his wife again, starting that day. He promised to share everything with Lisa. Over the next 3 months, he gathered a huge amount of information. He knew all about Nancy's lover, Jason White. Jason came to their house almost daily, either in the mornings when Bill was working the second shift or during lunch breaks. On weekends, when Nancy had to go shopping, she often went to Jason's apartment if he wasn't working. She even had a spare key. Bill discovered that she had bought Jason numerous gifts. He also overheard a conversation between Nancy and her best friend Betty, during which they revealed all their secrets. That's how he found out that Betty was having an affair with her brother-in-law. One Saturday, Bill rummaged through Nancy's handbag and discovered the key hidden at the bottom. Hastily, he drove to the mall and had a duplicate key made. The following week, he visited Jason's apartment, an old building in a sketchy part of town. The place was so inexpensive that it lacked security cameras, and the main entrance wasn't even locked. Inside, Bill strategically installed tiny hidden spy cameras powered by long-lasting lithium button cells. He meticulously searched the apartment and cataloged all of Nancy's expensive purchases. Bill then devised a scheme to sever ties with Nancy and her lover while inflicting maximum harm. He commissioned a goldsmith to replicate all of Nancy's jewelry in gold-plated copper. Additionally, he had a fake painting, The Train Station, by Pagnole, meticulously created by a professional artist following his specific instructions. To bolster his plan, he enlisted the help of his childhood friend Steve, a corporate lawyer. After detailing his strategy, Steve promptly scheduled a meeting a few days later. At the meeting, Steve introduced Bill to his cousin Linda, an expert auditor in her field. Bill openly shared his intentions to legally dismantle his company and oversee it remotely. His long-term plan involved having Linda's assistance in eventually buying back the company through strategic maneuvers. As they collaborated, Bill and Linda began meeting frequently, either at her office or over lunch. Linda, a widow who had not dated since her husband's tragic death in a car accident, gradually formed a friendship with Bill. One evening, Bill invited Linda to dinner and a movie, which she accepted. Meanwhile, Lisa, Bill's supposed partner, conveniently stayed overnight at a friend's place while Bill feigned working late. Bill arrived at Linda's house and expressed his gratitude for accepting his invitation. "This is my first date since my husband passed away," Linda confided. "I understand. I hope you enjoyed yourself," Bill replied. "I did. Could we do this again sometime when you're free?" "We work together and you're still married," Linda gently reminded him, kissing Bill on the cheek. "Let's take things one step at a time." With that, she opened her door and walked into her house. Bill persuaded Nancy to trade in her Lexus for a BMW, despite her initial reluctance because of her fondness for the Lexus. He convinced her that driving a BMW convertible would make her look younger, and she agreed. Since the Lexus was fully paid off, Bill sold it and pocketed the money. He then took out a car loan for the BMW, putting everything in Nancy's name. When Nancy signed what she thought was paperwork for the car's ownership, she unwittingly signed additional documents that would later cause problems for her. A couple of weeks later, Bill noticed that when Nancy goes to the bathroom after intimacy, Jason leaves the bedroom and goes to Lisa's room. He drew Lisa's attention to this, and she was furious. They decided to install a camera in her room. What they found was alarming. Jason opened a drawer, took out underwear, and ironed it. It was a shock to them. Bill wasn't surprised when he heard Jason trying to persuade Nancy to divorce him and take him, no matter what he was worth. However, the couple did not realize that Bill was already one step ahead. He knew that Nancy often let Jason drive the BMW and was even intimate with him in the car. Bill was aware when Nancy consulted with a divorce lawyer recommended by Paul, and he knew that the lawyer would investigate his business and assets. After waiting a few days, Bill took out a second mortgage on his house to fully finance Lisa's education. The next day, he filed for bankruptcy. Bill assumed that when he was served, Betty would change the locks on his house while they were in New York. On the weekend before Lisa's departure, father and daughter played their roles at a barbecue party. Paul and Betty were friendly as always. Paul even helped to cook the meat on the grill. No one would have thought that they could stab you in the back. That Friday morning, while Nancy was in the bathroom, Bill took her cell phone and sent Jason a text message. "I'll drive up to your apartment at 8 and I want you to take me to the bedroom before I go with them one last time. Favorite. Get a work permit and hurry home. I'll tell them that I need to buy something. Don't call or text me. I'll leave my cell phone at home in case they call me and ask where I am. See you soon, my future husband." Bill deleted the message after sending it and placed the phone back in Nancy's handbag. Unbeknownst to Jason, upon entering his apartment, 3 men would ambush him, assaulting him severely. Holding a knife to his throat, they would force him to send a resignation email to his manager and another to his landlord, stating he would vacate by month's end. After drugging him, they would clean his apartment, remove spy cameras, and steal valuables, making it appear he had left voluntarily. They would wrap his body in a carpet, load it into a van, and drive off, ensuring Jason would vanish without a trace. Lisa and Linda would remain unaware of Bill's actions against Jason. a secret he would carry to his grave. On Friday afternoon, following the completion of their transaction, Bill checked into a motel room. He chuckled while watching the evening news. Before dinner, a man from Jason's apartment arrived to meet him. He handed over all the cameras and received the final payment from Bill in silence, offering no information about Jason's whereabouts. On Saturday morning, Bill left the motel, purchased a new cell phone, and discarded the old one. He contacted Lisa to share his new number, then drove to Linda's house. There, he dedicated his time to assembling and editing the video recordings, taking care to blur Jason's face to prevent any potential link between them if Jason were reported missing. Bill stayed in the guest room and bonded with Linda's son. Together, Bill and Linda initiated the final stage of their plan, facilitating the purchase of the company by an elderly couple from Seattle, who happened to be Linda's uncle and aunt. They ensured that no employees would lose their jobs in the process. On Monday, he received a call from Lisa, who informed him that Nancy was trying to reach him. They shared a laugh about it. Afterwards, he uploaded all the videos to an adult website. Using a fake email address, he sent the link to everyone they knew, including Nancy's brother-in-law. He stayed at Linda's place for the next 3 months until his divorce case was resolved. They continued to date but refrained from any physical intimacy. Linda made it clear that Bill could only touch her once he was officially single. And Bill agreed, intending to honor his marriage vows until the very end. One advantage of living with Linda was that if investigated, Bill could claim he was financially struggling and unable to afford rent, and Linda graciously allowed him to stay in her guest room until he got back on his feet. On the day of the court hearing, Nancy was notably absent. With their house and Nancy's car already repossessed, and Bill facing financial hardship due to unemployment, the judge granted the divorce without alimony or division of assets. Nancy's lawyer made no objections. Later, they coincidentally met in the hallway. "You're quite the strategist, Mr. Thompson," the lawyer remarked. "Am I?" Bill replied with a furrowed brow, then walked away. Back to the present. "Dad, hello? Anyone home?" his daughter called out. "Yes, sweetheart, what is it?" Bill responded. "It's time for the father-daughter dance and you're just standing there?" she exclaimed. "Oh, sorry, darling, my mind was elsewhere." Bill took her hand, turned her around, and they started dancing to the music. "Now I need to dance with your mom," Bill told Lisa after the song ended. "And I promised my little brother he'd be next." Lisa smiled. Bill approached Linda and invited her onto the dance floor. Later, Bill went to the bar and ordered a whiskey. As he sat down, his thoughts raced back to the phone call he had received at home, in his bedroom. "Good morning, Mr. Thompson. I'm Dr. Henry D'Souza from Dallas, Texas. It concerns your wife." "What's wrong with my wife?" Bill asked, confused. "She's in the next room right now." "I mean Nancy Thompson." Bill hadn't heard that name in 5 years. He sank onto the bed. "I'm listening, doctor." "I'm a psychologist and I'm treating my patient Nancy Thompson in her final days." "Her final days?" "Yes, Mr. Thompson. Do you have a few minutes for me to explain the situation briefly?" "Yes, please continue," said a bewildered Bill. "Your ex-wife shared with me the story of her life, from childhood to our meeting. She mentioned that you were the only man she knew until she met a man named Jason, which she deeply regrets. She talked about the divorce she initiated and its consequences, believing that you knew about their affair and orchestrated her downfall. She takes responsibility for her actions and the loss of her family. When she left town, she had only $200. Feeling remorse and haunted by incriminating videos, she fled to Texas on the first bus. She found a job as a waitress in a rundown bar frequented by truck drivers. The bar owner offered her a cheap room in exchange for services. A year later, she became pregnant and, having no medical insurance, decided on a dangerous operation. A year later, the owner of the bar forced her into illegal activities, which led to serious health problems. She is seriously ill now. and wants to see you one last time before her death. Doctor, I'm very sorry to hear that. My daughter is getting married today. I will contact you next week. Please don't delay, Mr. Thompson. This is my direct line. Hey, honey, don't overdo the drinks. You'll take us home later. Linda hugged her husband warmly and kissed him tenderly. You mean everything to me, darling. Bill pushed his glass away. I would never risk endangering you and our son. Let's dance together. I want to feel you next to me. A few days later, Bill called Dr. D'Souza from his office to explain that his heavy workload meant he couldn't travel south. The doctor suggested he at least speak with Nancy over the phone. He arranged for the call to be transferred to Nancy's ward, where a nurse could bring her a cordless phone. Bill, is that you? Nancy's voice was faint. Yes, Nancy, it's me. Oh, Bill. Nancy began to cry. I'm so sorry, Bill, truly sorry for what I did to you and our family. Now I'm paying for it. I've forgiven you, Nancy. I've moved on and I'm happy. Bill took a deep breath. I need to thank you. After the divorce, I married an incredible woman and we have a son. Lisa calls her mom and they get along wonderfully. By the way, she just got married last Saturday. It was a beautiful wedding, all thanks to her mom. Lisa's kids will soon call her grandma. We're looking forward to that moment. Bill could hear Nancy crying and the commotion in the background of her ward. He waited, then heard a frantic voice. Mr. Thompson, I'm Nurse Angelica. I'm sorry I have to hang up. And the line went dead. Bill looked at the family picture on his desk. He smiled. Laughs best who laughs last, he told himself.